Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of The Archive, where we strive to tell interesting LARP stories and preserve our history. So excited for our guest today. This is Bryan of the Bearded Axe. How you doing, friend?
Doing pretty good, man. How you be?
Not too bad at all. I'm excited to have you on because out of all of the other LARP YouTubers, your channel is one of the ones that I follow most avidly, and I love all of the content that you make. And so having you on is I might be fangirling a little bit as we go through this. So I appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, anytime. Yeah, I mean, I'm always there to help out people and try and give content that I think the hobby really needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll start with a little bit of a flyover view. Give us what games have you played? When did you start? And then we'll what achievements you have in some of those games, and then we'll come back and pick through them a little bit as we go.
Yeah, I started out Amtgard when I was 13. Me and my friend Anton were just rambunctious teenage kids that just wanted to break stuff and get into fights and stuff like that. I was in northeast Portland. No way, I still think it's southeast in Laurelhurst Park. We were going to Laurelhurst Park and just break stuff. But I saw these guys that were hitting each other with foam swords. And I asked, what is going on with this? I got to know. This looks awesome. And then the guys were like, okay, well, this is a game called Amtgard, and it's a live action role play. Right now we're playing a battle game called the Zombie Battle, and it's the Royal Court versus the Zombie Horde. And so I thought that was just a really cool idea. And I was like, you mean I get to hit people, they can't sue me, and they can't throw me in jail? So, all right, I'm down. I want to do this. So basically for a year, they wouldn't take me because I was 13, not 14. Mm. So I was constantly coming back every week to the fighter practice and saying, hey, can you sign me up? Can you just sign the waiver? And they were like, no, for a year. And same with my mother, can you just sign the waiver? Sign the waiver. And for a year, finally they just gave in and signed up on it. And so, yeah. That was almost 30 years ago. And I did Amtgard for 22 years straight. I didn't want to cross game. I just wanted to do Amtgard, but I just got a little old and I wanted to see what else was out there. Mm. And, Bellegarth and Daggerhair really kind of spoke truer to my style of gameplay because I like to hit a little harder, make sure that, I know I've been hit, let everybody else know they've been hit. That sort of thing. It was a little bit more intense combat mechanics like shield bashing and grappling, that sort of thing. And
yeah, for sure. And the attire of Dag Bell seems to be a little bit more, just for me watching your videos, a little bit more up your alley as well.
Yeah, I think so as well. But even then, Amtgard, Bellegarth, Daggerhair, they all have their own aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of carnivalesque in a way to where it's just anything goes. It doesn't necessarily have to fit the Tolkien-esque fantasy genre. It could just be some hippy dippy, Baja pullover hoodies and tie-dye pants and just about anything you can see out there, you'll see it.
Yeah, for sure. And I that's one of the things that I'm excited to talk to you about as we get going here, is someone who has played in a few different games, some of the cultural differences, because a lot of our players and our hobbies don't cross game. And I think that's a detriment. I think that the people who can go back and forth, it makes everybody gets better when you cross game.
Right. I agree. You're going to find tricks that you won't be able to find in your local LARP or even nationwide. There's certain trick shots or combinations or, just a certain gear even that would be hey, that would be really good at Bellegarth if I could wear that kind of kit. And, you're not going to experience that unless you travel. You get outside of your little box, get out of your little pond, because you might be a big fish in a little pond. But really, when you get into the bigger, scheme of things, that next body of water, you're a small fish, and you can't grow beyond the size of your pond. And if you want to continue to grow, you got to get outside of that.
Yeah, for sure. So you said Amtgard for 22 years, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that. You said the battle games at the beginning. Was it always the combat that hooked you? I know you do a lot of the arts and science stuff on your channel. Was that what hooked you? To tell me about what initially was like the driving factor for you jumping into these games.
Oh, combat. Only combat. It was all about hitting people, and it was just being rough and just, indulging in that adolescent idea of violence, controlling the world around you through violence. And I just indulged in it for a long time. And, after 20 years, I mean, that's kind of how Amtgard has the potential of doing more than just combat, but 90% of it is just combat. And I kind of just got, well, what else is out there? I'm a little burnt out on this. What else can I experience? And what else is out there that, that I could find more interesting? I was that fish that was outgrowing the size of the pond, and I need to go beyond my comfort zone and try something else.
Yeah, for sure. I remember the first couple of times, again, I started in Amtgard and then have transitioned and played DAG quite a bit also. And the first time walking out onto a big DAG event is so different. The line fighting is different. It looks different. It feels different. And being able to play a game where I can focus purely on my fighting and not have to worry about who's yelling at me or who's throwing a packet at me or who's what, I love both games. But man, DAG, like big DAG events are a blast.
Right. Because it's just player skill and not how many levels you've grinded out for, your wizard, your spell slots and all that stuff. You don't have the sphere of annihilation or the fireballs and the, call for your deaths. None of that happens at Beldag. And so you can really focus on become a better player. You're not trying to use game mechanics to gain an advantage. And I always tell people there are certain aspects to each game that I love, and there are certain aspects to each game that I don't love. And I enjoy the competitive nature of Amtgard's fighting tournaments, the competitive nature of the ANS tournaments, even the big, we do something every year in my kingdom called Bridge Wars, and it's a 10-on-10 full class game. And that one's super fun because it's trying to figure out the counters and if you're running two assassins, I need to run a scout, and some of that is pretty fun. But when you go onto a DAG field and it's just the combat, there's something to that I miss at Amtgard. Yeah, I definitely I agree, and I've vented my frustration on Magic and how much I dislike it. Yeah. How I think it's OP, and Amtgard is definitely on that list of games where they use Magic as I think it's kind of to its detriment in a way. A lot of people like playing it. Some people say, well, just work around it, and I have. But it just gets old where you can invest so much less into becoming a Magic user than you can any other class, and still be very proficient and deadly. But I agree. There is an interesting mechanic within each game system, not just Amtgard, but Belagarth and Dagger here. If it's not game mechanics, then it's just simply weapons out on the field and how each one balances out the other.
One of
the rock, paper, scissors.
One of the things that I found super interesting in Dag Bell is the red, the two-handed red swords that are just not existent in Amtgard ever, because they're not crushing breaking in Amtgard, but in Dag Bell, you throw the back shield on and you grab, what is that, a 60-inch sword or 48-inch sword or whatever it is, and you two-handed, you can break shields all day long and go ham. And that's a skill set that as someone who only plays Amtgard, you will never really learn because it will never be meta in Amtgard. But when you go to Dag Bell, it's a completely different skill set that's really fun to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not you can definitely break shields in Amtgard, obviously, but it's for the full class battle games and things like that, militia battles. You're not gonna. It's not as common, I would agree. And when I started using red in Belagarth, and then I started using that same kind of aggressive mentality in Amtgard, people were terrified. They had no idea what was going on. I mean, I was smashing people. And people were like, can you not hit so hard? And I'm like, well, first of all, I'm using a foam weapon, and there's no rule against hitting hard. I'm not baseball bat swinging you. I'm not breaking bones or, doing anything like that. But it was mostly that they just were uncomfortable with the level of aggression that you need with a great weapon. And I would agree. There is definitely a difference in style of gameplay between the two.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely one of them. And the other thing is like shield checking and bashing. I think a lot of Amtgars aren't really used to that level of aggression, or at least like shield manipulation and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. The biggest thing that I always tell people in Amtgard before they cross game, they always get all worried about the shield checks, the grappling, and the shield kicking. And I said, now, shield checks happen. Those do regularly occur. As far as shield kicking and grappling, the only people, and I've been playing Dag Bell for 8 years now, the only people I have ever seen try and grapple outside of a tournament setting are Amtgarders who are trying to do it for the first time, and then they just get slaughtered. Like, it's not, right. People think it's like, oh, they can grapple, it's going to happen all the time. But you got to think about it. If you're in a line fight, it's not advantageous whatsoever to try and step out in front of your line and grab a hold of somebody. It doesn't work very well. And
right. I did actually last week's fight practice. It's kind of like an open-ended LARP fight practice, but we've been doing Bell Dag rule sets. And one guy had probably a 5-foot Danax, and I had a sword and shield, and I would just close up, and he ended up trying to grab onto me. But I'm a little bit stronger and wiry than he was used to, and he wasn't able to get an advantage, and I was able to get my weapons out and hit him. But I mean, he was trying something to kind of keep me. Once I closed in, he really didn't have much, so he kind of had to grapple. But yeah, it is kind of a rare thing that when it does happen, I wouldn't do it in a line fight, because then you're just, you're exposing yourself, and you're gonna get the wacky bats.
Yeah, and something I always try and tell people too, I do, when I pick up a red or a spear or a glaive, I do have to ramp up, 20 or 30% to go play Dag Bell. But when I'm fighting with my singles, I fight almost the same way. I fight with Dag swords generally at Amtgard anyway, except for tournaments. And then I bump down to the 6-ounce bats for tournaments. But people are like, oh, well, you have to hit so much harder at Dag with your singles. I go, I mean, you can, but like I fight the same at both games, and in both games I'm effective with it. And so I think people who have never cross-gamed overestimate the differences sometimes. You said Amtgard and Dag Bell, and I think one of your videos said you've been to Beakeling, correct?
Yeah, I've been to the last 6 Beacos.
Cool. Tell me about that. That is something that fascinates me. I've just seen the videos online, and the towns look fantastic. The battles look fun. If you're trying to hype someone up or sell Beakeling to someone who's never been, how would you do it?
How would I do it? To another combat LARPer, I would say that you're going to have the biggest, most epic battles you'll ever see in LARP in the North American area. You're just never going to find it. I've been to Clan, I've seen Ragnarok, I've seen Western Wars, or I've been to like a lot of bigger events, and this is like 5,000 people on the battlefield, and it goes over 200 acres, and they've got a wooden fort, they've got lots of woods, and they've got roads to fight on. Now, they don't necessarily battle inside the town during the Grand Battle, because that's where people are living, that's where fires are at, and where you see the fights in the town itself, those are on campaign weekends that happen like every month. And it's like, it could be like 3 8-hour, sometimes 24-hour battles where it goes 24 hours, and it's like they start at 11 a.m. one day, like say on a Saturday, and then they'll go to 11 a.m. on a Sunday. I've heard those are kind of rare now. They don't do them as often. Of course, with COVID, nothing was going down. But I think, I've heard stories where, they don't probably do the 24-hour ones because people are they'll fight the entire time, and they'll just wear themselves out. The one campaign I did was 8 hours long.
Wow.
And so you had to basically keep these points, these occupying points. And once you hold it for a certain amount, that's your new respawn point. And then the more points you hold for the longest amount of time, the more actual points or money or something, you're gaining more control over the city that you're actually invading virtually. So say you're trying to invade some city in the north, well, then you'd use the whole town as the siege where you would be invading and, maintaining that invasion or defending, either side. And each faction's kind of there to represent their side. You don't necessarily have to be a part of any kind of alliance. You can just show up and just say, hey, I'd like to fight for those guys, and they'd be like, yeah, sure. Sometimes there's a limit on how many people on either side you can have.
Okay.
But for the most part, people can play when they want to play.
That's cool. For the viewers who aren't familiar with Beakeling, it is a LARP. I think mainly an event. They probably have multiple events throughout the year, but it's up in Canada, and they have 200 acres. They have a whole 2 towns built with merchants and with the tents and with everything. And you should go, if you haven't seen any of it, you should go to YouTube and check it out. It looks really, really fun.
Yeah. And I know the owners, and they've got big plans building. And if they haven't already kind of started building during COVID, I'd be very surprised. They've got, they were going to build an actual bridge between 2 towers and a kind of very shallow ravine. And players can actually go across this bridge and battle on the bridge. There were so many really cool plans that Olivier and Basha were talking about that I thought were really, really awesome. And that's one thing you're not going to get in most North American LARPs is you don't have, that scale and an entire land that is entirely dedicated to this particular LARP.
Yeah, for sure.
That we've all been dreaming about ever since we started to buy land, develop it, have our own castles on it, our own events. And I think they've actually done it.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about the combat, because some of the videos that I've seen, it looks like they're using latex weapons and not boffer stuff. Is it a toned down? How's the scale of the force that you're hitting with out there?
I would say it's very medium.
Okay.
Sometimes it gets a little intense, and I'm fine with that because a lot of people are using plate. And I think it's a courtesy for a lot of people because the adrenaline's up, you're wearing some padding, and you're wearing plate. A heavier shot is something that you're going to have to do with some of these guys. I've seen footage where armor is literally getting dented by the force of the blows that were being given. Guys were like, dent here, dent on the helmet. And that's the other thing. They allow head shots, they land hand shots and foot shots. The only off-limit targets are the face and the throat. Outside of that, it's open game.
Interesting. So that's one of the things I have tried my hand with some of the latex sword combat systems, and I have never found one that I can really get into because I'm kind of like you. I love the fighting aspect of it. In any game that I have to intentionally pull my shots back on, it's hard for me. Like Dystopia Rising, games like that. They're fun and I love the mechanics behind them. But it is hard for me to really get into a game that I can't actually throw shots. So is Beakeling in that area, or is it like a go ham, throw your shots, and if you're coming from Dagbell and Amtgard, you don't got to worry?
The first guy I fought at Beakeling, I put him in a concussion. So I was like, I wanted to make sure he took my shots, and I'm kind of coming straight from Belagar, and it's like you had to do a full body, full force swing in order for it to count. And and unfortunately, it kind of ruined his Beako week because he was concussed the whole time. You do need to pull your shots. Like every LARP that you're in, you want to kind of gauge your shot based on who you're fighting. If they're just brand new, or if they're just kind of sensitive, I guess the word is, you don't want to just crush them. Then that's just a dick move, and they don't want to come back, and you lose one more player that could just really contribute a lot to the hobby or to the chapter, your unit. And it doesn't help anybody. So yeah, I would gauge your shots for the most part. You can go from medium. I think medium is probably as hard as you should probably go. And again, if you're fighting some guy in plate and it's really intense, then I'd crank it up a little bit. I'd make sure they knew they got hit.
Yeah, that's cool. I know I've played a little bit of the SCA, and one of the hard parts for me was transitioning to headshots. I don't mind getting hit in the head just because the helmets are so good. It's not too bad. But training, I've been playing the foam games for so long where nothing on the head is a valid target. That switching to be able to play to ring someone's bell took me a long time to get over. And so that would be fun to be able to do a foam game or a latex game with the head as a valid shot other than the face, obviously. That would be fun.
I think if weapons like the latex weapons were a little heavier, I think they would replace rattan, and that's where you can feel like you've been hit. And again, it's the culture is going to be completely different. I had a conversation with an SCA guy who used a rubber head for a mace, and he had a hard time with people taking his shots because it just tends to not slap as hard because there's a bit of a bounce to it. And some guys just wouldn't take it, even though it was, he would hit hard enough. It would just hit softer than normal. And that's a solid rubber head.
Yeah. The videos of beagling, even if like the fighting looks fun, but the thing for me that gets me is the city, the town, and the environment. And it seems to be a Renaissance fair-esque, but for weeks at a time. And that just sounds so much fun. Oh, 8 week. Okay. I thought they did
7 days. But yeah, it does feel like it's a couple of weeks after a while. Because my first year that I went, we were fighting every day, like 2 or 3 battles every day. And I was fine with it. It was conditioned. I was doing pretty good. So it wasn't that big of a deal. There's one misconception that I'd like to correct is that it's not wall-to-wall role-playing. Like most of the time, people aren't role-playing. They're just going out to have a battle, fight, have fun, and then head back to camp, drink, and party. And you're not going to go into somebody's camp. They're going to be role-playing. They're just going to be themselves, hanging out, by a fire, telling stories or whatever, typical kind of LARP event stuff. And I would, that's one misconception. There are some guilds that do role-play 24/7. They're a bit rare, but they're out there. But some people even go out of their way. They're role playing 24/7, even though their unit doesn't.
Yeah. And I think you can find that in all of the games where there is some element of the role play, and there are going to be people who that's what they enjoy the most, and they're going to be way into it. And then the average player will role play, some a little bit. And then you have some people who can't stand the role play and don't ever play with it. And it kind of runs the gamut in most of these games.
Right. Yeah. And, but it's like, if you like to fight and you like to party, Bico is definitely a place for you. Shopping's really good too. So you can buy a lot of cool LARP gear, clothing. You name it, you can find it there. There's actually a cobbler there now. He makes shoes, and everybody swears by him. Like half of Bico have this guy's shoes.
That's awesome.
And, this guy, he produces really high quality shoes.
And for the Americans watching, if you're interested in this, because it is over the border, it's up in Canada. You do need your passport. You do need to get some of that stuff. But there is it's called the Voyage North, if I recall, and it is a guild essentially that specializes in taking new players and American players up there, and because sometimes the language barrier, the money difference, and yada yada, and they focus on bringing Americans up. So if that's something you're interested in, they've got a website. Beagling videos on YouTube are so fun to watch. I'd highly recommend going and checking some of them out. Yeah,
actually, I know. The Voyage North, I work with them every year. I help set up their tents, and I help nudge them in certain directions. And, some things they listen to, some things they didn't. And they're doing great. Yeah. And Jordan, my good friend, who's actually running that whole show, has just taken off with it. And I think he's doing really well. So yeah, it definitely gets you plugged into what would seem to be a very how should I put this? It seems intimidating, but really it's not. I did it the first year by myself, and there was no Voyage North. It was just me. I just was like, well, I'm going to go. I'm going to try it. Even if I don't speak French, I'm just going to go up there and just enjoy my time. You know, I mean, we all speak the language of violence, and so I'm going to go up there and do my best. And surprisingly, a lot of people speak English, and they were very welcoming and very courteous. And they were very hospitable. And don't, it's not as intimidating as you think it is in your own mind. There's a handful out there that don't like you, but it's like 1 out of maybe 1,000.
Okay.
Really, cool. They'll refuse to speak English to you because they think it diminishes their culture if they're constantly having to accommodate other culture, languages, and things like that. But it's there. Like I said, it's very few and far between those guys. And for the most part, everybody's pretty on point. Some people are a little embarrassed with their English, but their English is way better than my French.
Yeah, that's it right there. I have mad respect for people who know multiple languages, and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to speak the second or third language. I'm like, guys, I can barely even like learn the basics of a second, let alone be able to speak it like you guys are. Mad props.
Right. If we're in a situation and I don't know what's going on, I can kind of get the context of what you guys are talking about. So I'll pick up on it. For the most part, though, I am kind of lost. But I mean, they'll a lot of the role play stuff that does happen will be in French. So that's the other thing. If you want to be involved, you kind of have to have a translator of guys like that's kind of just translating quietly in the corner, telling you what's going down. And you can find one of those guys like, hey, can you tell me what that meeting was about, or can you translate during this meeting? And somebody will definitely be helping out.
That's awesome. So we've got Amtgard, we've got Dag Bell, and we've got Beakling. Any other games that you actively participate in or have in the past?
I did Alliance, which is now Reckoning or Refuge Larp.
Okay.
Where they changed their name, but I did that for a little while, and it just wasn't a fit for me, so I moved on from that. I did Dameron for a little bit, and just have it. I was planning on going back pre-COVID. And then it's kind of like now that COVID's clearing up, they're starting up new games. I'm thinking about taking another trip up there. It's a really high role play, really intense, high immersion role play kind of environment. And it's interesting. They kind of explore some interesting ideas there.
That's neat. I like the events that are different from all of the other ones where I'm not the biggest role play fan, but if you tell me ahead of time, hey, this is a 48-hour role play event, I can get into it. Right. The hard part for me with Amtgard is we don't have an actual backstory at all. And so it's really difficult for me because the game is set up to incorporate in the same universe, your half gold dragon, half orc paladin who's also next to your historical 14th century Mongolian, and being able to do both of those together. So most of the time the role play in the games that I've been around is like corny at best. But if you go and do the events, that this entire event, you're going to be in character. And I know that before I get there, I can actually get into it and have a lot of fun with it. Yeah,
I think so too. And again, you're not going to see a whole lot of the role play events out of Amtgard, and I think that's kind of to its detriment. I think it has potential of doing a lot more, but just doesn't. People are just there to fight and party. That's fine. Same thing with Biko. I see the same thing where I think it could be more, but it's a lot of intensity for people that just want to go and have fun. So some people are just there and they're just kind of a joke character. Or their whole guild is kind of a joke, like the arrogant bastards. Their slogan is "No fat chicks." I mean, they're purposefully just arrogant jerks all the time. They're always just full of themselves, and they're just making fun of themselves, and they're just kind of like, and it's just for them, it's just funny. It's just fun and funny. There's another guild that has gotten a lot of notoriety. They are they're the Hell King, but they try and be the most upsetting, gross, kind of people they can be, and they get a little bit of enjoyment for it. People are like, well, that's them, and we're not going to go too far into discussing some of it. And it's best to just ignore them because they feed off of that reaction. It's almost like this angsty teenager shock kind of value that you kind of get with these guys. So it's kind of like, all right, well, that's you. Just be that over there sometimes.
That's one of the hard parts for me is when I see some of the role play in an Amtgard. It's like, I'm an anti-paladin, so I'm going to be the biggest jerk in the world to you. It's like, there is a difference between in the game taking actions in which your character would take, and then off the field being a jerk afterwards. Like you can role play an evil character, go for it. But the second that transcends into someone else wanting to step off the field or leave the event because of your actions, you've gone too far. You're not doing it right.
Right, and that's kind of where there should be like out of game areas and in game areas where it's like, okay, I'm here. Anything you do is your personal character. Who you are as a person, not as your persona. When you're in the in-game area, you're all persona. Everything you say is taken in that context. And and there's kind of some of the other LARPs I've done. It's like the parking lot is the out-of-game area. The bathroom is an out-of-game area. There's various areas where you can just go and unplug, and anything that's said or done in that area is generally out of character. So you can kind of unwind, decompress whatever just happened. Or if you're just straight up not having a good time, you can just go and just chill out at your car or, wherever the out of game area, the smoke area would be. And I think I wouldn't have known about that unless I went to another game. So again, it goes back to getting out of your comfort zone, experiencing things from another viewpoint, another game mechanic standpoint, and then saying, hey guys, I just went over this other LARP and saw this cool thing we can integrate. It's like everything out here is in game. Everything over here is out of game. So we can just kind of differentiate our characters' behaviors a lot more easily.
Well, and it's funny because in Amtgard, the standard is you are not in character. And then we have role play taverns or role play night quests where you are in character, where some of the other games, it is assumed you are in character. And there are places where you're not, which is just a cool dynamic going back and forth there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get your opinion since you've played in so many different games. Help me in my mind, like compare and contrast. Give me something that you love about the culture or the game of these big things that you love or the games that you've played, but then also give me something that you're not a huge fan of, because there aren't that many people that I know of who have cross-gamed into as many games that you have.
Okay. Start with Amtgard. I really like it's very open-ended. A lot of people tend to can get into it a lot more easily. I've seen all sorts of people groups in Amtgard, and so it's very inclusive. That's one thing I really like about it. I really liked the game mechanics at first, but I think after a while it started to wear on me, especially how there were like pet character classes that were favored, and all the way from the very first editions. And up until the 8.0, I don't know what you guys are at now.
Yeah, they're still on 8. They're working on 9.
Right. And so there's always these pet classes that just kind of get boosted, whereas all the just strictly combat classes like Warrior or Barbarian tend to get nerfed. And it's like, well, we need more wizard stuff. We need more, Bard, druid stuff or whatever. And it's like, all right, come on, they're already overpowered. We don't necessarily need to have them more. So, and that tended to burn me out. I think it was kind of like a crutch. I would like to have more magic, but I think it would be more interesting, more role play based magic. I think, having some rituals or something that encourages role play, I think should be integrated into Amtgard. I think it would definitely improve the game overall. Beldag, I think it's just a straight combat that I like. And it's this
same
environment of just like it's competitive, but not to the point where people get upset over like shots that weren't taken or perceived shots that they should have taken. And I saw a lot of that in Amtgard with the tournaments and things like that, you know. And again, with Beldag, it should be very clear that you've been hit, you know, because it's like full force swings. You know, if it didn't hit hard enough, then they don't have to take it. And that's what I like about them is that no nonsense, like if that were a real weapon, would that have hurt me?
Yeah.
Of things, then you can gauge that. Whereas Amtgard is like, I don't know, did that deflect an angle? Did it stop? I don't know.
Did it make an audible pop?
Right. And even then, it's like, how do I know if that just didn't hit my shield and it was only my shield? Or the same thing with my opponent. And I've had, you know, kind of like grown men throwing tantrums when they perceive a shot wasn't taken. And it's like, and I think the culture of the sword night and things like that, I think tends to put a black eye on Amtgard in general. And I think they put too much emphasis on that. And yeah, and again, going back to the titles of nobility, and I think that tends to work against Amtgard and SCA, because then it provides an opportunity for people to step on other people to step up. Like, I'm a lord, and so therefore you're beneath me, and I can treat you as such, right? Or the anti-paladin example. I'm a jerk because I'm an anti-paladin. Therefore, I'm evil, and I do evil things.
And you can't punish me because I'm just role-playing.
Right. And I think that, and again, the culture itself has to kind of weed that sort of stuff out.
Yeah.
And having titles, I thought was a really good idea because it encourages people to improve themselves, to grow themselves personally, to get, you know, to work on a skill set, to get better at fighting, better at arts and sciences, better at politics, organizing events, things like that the club needs. But I think it's a double-edged sword, and I think it hurts and it helps about as equal amounts.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think Amtgard's ladder awards are one of the things that draws the most players in and keeps them coming back. But if you were to survey people as they leave, what's the number one reason why you left? It's probably over those same ladder awards.
Right. And it did become pretty toxic in the Northwest where I was at. And it just kind of like, all right, I'm spending my time, my vacation time, my energy, lots of money to do this thing, and I'm not enjoying it as much as I think I could.
Yeah.
So maybe let's explore some other options. And I think that's, you know, but I mean, I would have done that eventually, but I mean, I think that there was a certain level of toxicity that you get when you have, say, levels or players that have kind of like been there for 20 years and they're well established and they're toxic people. They're not going to be taken out anytime soon. And you're going to you're going to push away good players, good, you know, new players. You're not going to get any new blood. And I think that's hurting the club itself as well.
Yeah, I could see that. So what?
Yeah, I think go ahead.
I was going to say, so what, you said you love Dagbell because of the combat. Is there something on Dagbell rule set that you're not a fan of? Or culture, I guess, either one?
There's like little silly rules, like you can't have full metal knees and elbows. Yeah, it's kind of like, why? Because I said so. Yeah. Okay, well, that little excuse got really old when I was 5. You know, how about you give me a reason why? Or nobody's ever explained it to me.
The face helms.
Right. Yeah, you can't have a full metal helm. And what does that mean? Is that like the traditional medieval full helm? Or does that mean that, you know, some parts of it have to be leather? And which parts? And it's never really explained.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think and again, I like the simplicity of the rules, but, and again, certain things just don't make sense. You know, like I think if you're going to wear plate mail, you should get more points for it. But again, I think they're choosing simplicity over game mechanics.
That is one thing I like about Dagbell is I don't have to count 6 points of armor off on each limb. Like just having 1 point of armor. Now it is weird when someone can throw on shark mail and have the same armor value as as someone in, full 70 pounds worth of plate. Like I get that, but I love just 1 point. It's done. It's easy.
Right.
Don't worry about it.
And I think they should outlaw things like shark mail. I think it looks ridiculous. It's a cheap kind of meta thing. And I think that
for those who don't know, shark mail is a type of armor that you can purchase for about $250 to $350. You can get a full tunic of this micro mail titanium armor that in Amtgard at least still counts as 3 points of armor. And I'm pretty sure it passes in DAG. I don't know if it does in Bell. And it weighs, a whole suit weighs like 7 pounds. Like it weighs nothing.
Like if it's just a t-shirt and it's like a couple of pounds, it's like literally nothing. You could sleep in it.
Yep.
And again, I think it makes the club look bad. I think it makes the player look bad. And I think it's just, I think it kind of goes against the spirit of the rule itself. Like you're wearing armor, it should hinder you in some way.
And it doesn't at all.
It doesn't. And so that's my opinion. Some people are going to be mad about it. Well, then be mad about it somewhere else. I don't care. I think there are just some silly rules with Beldag. I think they need to really enforce their garb standards because I go to many events and those standards aren't upheld. And it's literally written in the rule book. Yeah. And it's just
see, and that's one of the things. That's one of the things I love about DAG Bell are the garb standards. Like going from an Amtgard field, which has almost no garb standards whatsoever, to going to DAG Bell. That's one of the things I love the most. And one of the things I love the most about the SCA too. I think the look and feel of those games are significantly superior than the look and feel to Amtgard.
I would agree. And I think that's one thing that SCA has over a lot of other LARPs is that the fact that their culture really encourages people to do better instead of just saying, well, that's just them. They're just going through a hard time. They can't afford it. They don't have the time. Whatever, excuse they want to, give the guy. Reality is it's like they're not putting the effort in. And, with the SCA, their classes, they can teach you. They have people that are willing to kind of take you under their wing and try and help you out. And like, here, I've got some old gear that you can have. And I think that's one thing about the SCA that you don't really see just about anywhere else is that they're going to be a lot more, they're going to encourage you to do better and dress better and get better kit, better decorum, tenting or whatever.
Well, in Amtgard, one of the biggest advertising pieces for Amtgard is that we can get you started for $20, right? It is the cheapest of the games, and we can build you a sword for $20. Well, SCA, to play the SCA, you're spending $400 on a kit. You know what I mean? And so the expectation of the cost is there up front, where for Amtgard and to a lesser extent to DAG Bell, it kind of sneaks up on you over time, right? You can play those games for next to nothing, but then if the expectation is there from the very beginning, like it is in the SCA, people don't balk at a $75 tunic because they spent $300 on a helmet. You know what I mean?
There was for years, I was thinking about this, probably 15 years ago, going over the LARP theory, the game mechanics and things like that. And there's the idea of being invested in the game. Like the less you have to invest time, energy, effort, money, all of those things that you have to invest into that particular hobby, the less serious you're going to take it. So you're gonna treat it like a joke. If you pay nothing, you buy people, you borrow people's gear. The only thing you contribute is maybe weed and booze. That's the only thing you really contribute. You're going to think of it as like a joke. Yeah. Whereas if you did spend $300 and you have the potential of getting kicked out of the event if you act like an ass, then you're much more likely to mind your P's and Q's. You're not going to act like a jerk. You're not going to chase away new players, things like that. That was one of the theories of being invested. If you had a higher event cost, chances are you're not going to step out of line. Like if you had $100 plus, $150 plus event just for a weekend event, I guarantee you're going to have people that are not going to be getting out of line, because then they have invested in that money. They don't want to lose it. And likewise, I think event organizers should be charging more for events. That way they can reinvest that back into the club or business, depending on how that LARP is organized, whether it's owned by a group or a single person, or it's literally a club where people are elected.
That's something people don't understand. Our Kingdom events right now are $50 for a weekend. If my wife and I were to go camping at that same campground, it's going to be like $25 to $30 a night just to camp. Let alone the food, let alone all of the awards that they pay to make, let alone all of the props, let alone, like, people complain about a $50 event, and there are some kingdoms in Amtgard that are cheaper than that. They're like $25 or $30 an event. And I'm like, guys, you can't even camp for that much.
Right. You just can't. And I think that people need to grow up and start paying more for their hobby, because, you know, if you want more out of your hobby, then you need to start paying more. You know, if you want these big epic castles and things like that, well, guess what? You're going to have to start paying double what you're already paying now, because that stuff doesn't come cheap. Yeah, I mean, there's like that campaign event I told you about, Beakling. I think that was like $80, and it was like, that was an 8-hour event. Granted, I could camp there Friday night, party, and then next day, you know, fight all day, then Saturday night all the way to Sunday morning. So it was kind of like a 3-day event, but the actual combat and anything was only 8 hours long. But it was still $80, you know. And then, you know, they have a tavern there, and they're selling food, and there's, you know, all that stuff. So yeah, they're making a little bit of money here and there, but they take that money and they dump it back into property development, game development, you know, all the stuff that requires them to do that. And that's one thing I think they do really well, is that they reinvest their money extremely well.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I kind of point. So my local SCA Shire, just the smallest of their organization, has more money in their bank account than my entire 4-state kingdom, which is the largest kingdom in Amtgard. You know, so like this idea of, well, we're the kingdoms in Amtgard and some of these other LARPs, they need to make money, but the players don't want to pay it. But you look over here, you know, they have, it's almost double what that this little shire has, almost double the amount of funds in their bank account than my whole kingdom does. It's like, all right, guys.
Surprise me. And again, Northwest Amtgard has been notorious for issues with money, where officers would abscond with money. I mean, there was 2 or 3 situations where that had happened.
Wow.
And, you know, it's like, it would really lame excuses. One person just straight up got caught, and there was a money trail going back to this person. And again, no jail time. They just lost all their titles, you know, that sort of thing. And it's like, you gotta hold these people accountable. And likewise, it's like, if there's no repercussions for their actions, then people are going to keep doing it. They're going to be tempted to do it next time they have access to this money. And so I get the whole idea. I don't want to donate to this organization if it's not going to be spent the way I want it to. And again, that's the club versus company kind of mechanics, or not mechanics, ownership. Like, who owns it? Is it owned by the collective, like the club, or is it owned by a person or a group of people? And yeah, I think, and again, I'm going to ramble a little bit about this. I think which one's more superior over the other? I would say definitely whoever. I like the company aspect. It's run like a company. It's run like a business. I like that over a club atmosphere, because club atmospheres tend to have like some really toxic people get in charge, and then they stay in charge. And that's what I saw. And it just burned me out. Whereas with a company, it's like, you know who's in charge. You know, it's pretty clear right off the bat.
You know who to hold accountable.
Right. And it's like they hold whoever is there is accountable. So it's like, you step out of line. Well, guess what? The owner can kick you out for any reason, whenever.
Yeah.
I mean, generally, there's a list of things when you step out of line, but you know not to, because there's one person that will do it because his business is on the line. Whereas a club is like, whatever. That's Joe over there, old drunk Joe. we'll just kind of keep an eye on him. You know, yeah, he's hitting on 16-year-old girls or whatever. That's just Joe. Oh, yeah. You know, and it's like, you know, companies wouldn't really tolerate that for the most part.
Well, and just from a rules perspective, the bureaucracy needed to change a rule in Dag Bell and Amtgard because they are club structures. If I have a major issue, I go to my park first, and then I go to my kingdom, and then I go to my kingdom's board of directors, and then I might get to Amtgard's board of directors. Right. Or if there's a rule that wants to be changed, you're talking about a 3-year-long process to change one line in the rule book. Whereas if it's a company and if something needs to be done, you do it. That's how it is.
Yeah, they think about it and they tell the player base, but you know, ultimately it's down to one person's call, and then it's made. Yep. That's it.
And if as a player you don't like it in Dag Bell and in Amtgard, you go onto the Facebook page and you complain about it and hope it gets better. Where if you don't like it versus the company, just you vote with your feet. You know, if you don't like it, go play another game. And the economy of it, if they made a bad choice, they will have to go back on it if they're losing enough money. And that's how things get done. I like that model too.
Yeah. And for me, I've had fewer incidents of like really, really poor behavior. And when you have a higher event cost, when you have when it's run like a business versus a club, like they were like really hard drugs being done at like Empire when I was doing, like one guy went blind from some bad acid that he took, you know, and it's like meth is out there, and you know, it's like you get caught with that sort of stuff, and most of the business run LARPs, they're going to kick you out.
Yeah, you're out.
They're going to ban you.
Because it's a liability on them.
Right. There was one guy who had an empty beer can in a cabin, and at the state park, that the game organizer found this, and it was like, nope. You know, if we get caught with any, you know, alcohol here, like a park ranger sees you and you're drunk, or you have, you know, a empty beer can, even if you didn't even drink it there, they're going to think that we're drinking here. We're going to get kicked out of the spot, and we don't want to do that. And so you violated a rule that was very clear, and then they booted him. You know?
Yep. I get that. It's interesting to see how different LARPs set themselves up and the positives and negatives of both sides of that. It's a fascinating conversation because they're all set up so differently, and you can like, ooh, I like this, ooh, I like that, and then kind of seeing how they all kind of come together.
And I think that's one thing. It's like if and again, if you're in a club, it's like, well, I'd like to change some things, so I have to get into power, and then it's like this long process of working the politics and trying to get into office and things like that, and then maintaining it and trying to integrate your ideas into action. There's a big schism in Dagger here right now because they want to change some of the rules, but they can't because they're not part of Eritari. Yep. And you have to be a part of that particular chapter and for a certain amount of time, and then get elected into a position of, you know, and it's like some people are like, I don't want to, this is something that we cannot change. You're basically telling us we cannot change it at all. Yep. There's nothing we can do to do that. And again, with the club atmosphere, you can't really change it. And as a business, you kind of say, hey, look, I have a problem with this, and maybe other people do too, but if you're not going to do anything about it, then likewise, I got to walk away. And it's the same thing with like Dagger here, Amtgard, you know, Dameron, Biko, whatever. If there's something that I just cannot morally support, then I would just walk.
Yeah, for sure. And I know Amtgard has a culture of those who step up on the national level tend to not last very long. Like we eat our own very, very much. So the guy in the 90s, Aramithras, right? He was in charge of it all. Then his group got booted by Brennan and his group, and then Brennan ended up getting booted. And I don't know who the big name is like right now, but
one narcissist rise to power, then another one replaces them.
Yep.
And eventually it's like the friends that supported you tend to fall away, and you don't have that support anymore. Then you have another guy that's, you know, coming up, and eventually, you know, this cycle of narcissists that step up into these positions. And, Yeah, I've seen it.
Mhm.
I've seen the reruns of it.
And luckily, the last few years, AmGuard has moved to the AmGuard International Board of Directors, and I think that has helped quite a bit because the rules revision process and the new kingdom process and all of that has now been shifted to one person can't quite be in charge of everything anymore, and I like that.
Yeah.
It is inching better and better. How about that? It's not exactly where I want it to be, but it is better than what it was when I started. So
yeah, I have to. There's no AmGuard around me, but I would do it. That's the other thing I love about AmGuard, Dagger Belagarth, is you have regular fight practices.
100%.
And it doesn't cost anything to go. You can just show up, and generally, it's lower kit standards, but I generally wear all the kit that I can at any kind of practice. But you get your exercise, you sharpen your skills. So when you go to these high role play events where they don't do that sort of thing, they don't go to regular weekly practices. You're going out there and you're creaming people.
Yeah.
Like they're not used to that skill level.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the things I like is so when I started playing AmGuard, it was in Indianapolis and I had 6 AmGuard parks within an hour from me. And then I had two DAG parks within an hour from me. So you could hit 4-5 days. I mean, you get as many days as you want. You can go fight with fighter practices and park days. And the weekly interaction of the foam fighting games is superior to most of the event type of LARPs.
Right. The high role play, high immersive LARPs where they don't do regular practices. They just want to dress up and act tough. They don't actually want to do the work for it.
Yeah.
Whereas you do, if you go to these weekly practices, you put in the work, you're going to go back to these let us touch, role play, high immersion games, and you're going to be crushing people. You're going to be doing really, really well.
Yep, for sure. So I want to transition a little bit and move to your YouTube channel because that's the way I heard about you. I found, I remember I'm a big Mongolian fan. All my winter garb is Mongolian, and I was looking up a video on how to build a yurt because that was something that I wanted to potentially look at, and I stumbled across your videos and then have been watching your videos for a couple of years now, if I recall. So what got you into LARP YouTube? What was that decision like? Why'd you do it?
A lot of it was like, I've got this wealth of knowledge and experience, and it's like, how do I share that? And I should probably do it on a mass scale and like start showing people how I've made things and how I can improve the hobby overall. How to make a medieval or decorum style tent, how to make a wagon, how to make a plastic dip shield, how to rebuild a sword. And I'd like to do more. I'm starting to get into a better financial position where I could start doing more review videos where I can buy gear and like tell you, the good, bad, and the ugly about it.
Yep.
And so like I've done some gear reviews that I've bought some gear and I've told you about them, but new gear is something that I was like, well, should I buy this LARP weapon or not? How long will it last?
I bought one of the Berkshire bags off of your videos. I use that as my spell ball holder for AmGuard now.
It's a solid bag and it's pretty tough. I'm going to start doing more review videos. I think that's something that we all need to know is like if the investment of a $200 sword is actually worth it. How long will it last? Because $200 is a lot for some people. I think for most people, for a hobby, where you're just throwing $200 out. Yeah. And if it lasts one weekend, it's not really worth it.
For sure. I love the review videos that are out there. There's not a whole lot out there for LARPing. And so there are a few people that are doing them. And I think those are incredibly, incredibly helpful.
Right. And I think a lot of the ones that I've seen, they don't really put it through the test. They just open it from a box like, oh, wow, this is so good. But it's like, but have you really tested it? Have you really put it through its pieces? Have you gotten to the point where it actually gets destroyed under like realistic conditions? And what do you think about it? And again, that requires a large investment into, destroying something. And most people don't want to do that. And I would love to see that. And it's like, okay, well, I'd like to see it, but nobody else is doing it. So I got to be the guy that does it, right? Be the change in the world that you would like to see. And yeah, that's definitely one of those things where it's like, okay, I can do that. You know, I don't have a whole lot of responsibilities right now. I could probably throw up a few hundred every now and again for some gear. And maybe if I get enough of them, people start sending me stuff and like test it out. That'd be nice.
That's the dream, isn't it? I've got a couple. Yeah, I've got a couple of review videos up on my YouTube channel, and they're not tons of views, but that's the dream. It's like, ooh, can I send an email to Dark Armory and they send me $1,000 worth of gear to try out, and we get enough views that it's beneficial for both of us. Like, that's the dream.
Right. And I think I need to just continue to kind of invest time into the channel where I can start building up my subscriber base and my my viewership and all that stuff. But it is a huge investment. It really is. It's like 20 hours. Any kind of free time I get, it goes into a video. I haven't done it a lot lately, but it's definitely one of those things where, it takes quite a bit of effort to invest into not just money, but time.
For sure. So how long have you been making videos for YouTube? And then roughly, if you make call it a 10-minute video, how much time, like, give some insight for those who don't know the filming and the editing, how much time goes into like a 10-minute video of yours?
I'd say 20 hours from start to finish, from concept to actual publishing. Just like it could be a 10-hour day in the shop, and then another 10 hours of editing, and then, uploading and just trying to like get everything right, and then promoting the video. All of that stuff takes time. And it got down to about 20 hours for 10 minutes of video. I've had slightly more, and I've had slightly less, but it's right around 20 hours. And,
and you've got
a part-time job. It's a part-time job that don't get paid much to do.
You got 2 hours of Adobe just trying to render your video too for that.
Right.
It takes me, these are a little bit longer, obviously, these videos. And it takes me, I start it when I, on a Saturday morning when I wake up, and generally by lunch, Adobe has finished rendering my video. It's like, oh.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. If you have a lot of motion graphics, that sort of thing, yeah, you're going to have to deal with a lot more processing time.
Yeah, for sure. So if there's someone who's watching this and they're maybe interested in starting a YouTube channel or a Larp podcast, or they want to be a content creator in this space in some form or fashion, what advice would you give to them jumping in?
Keep it short and sweet, small bite-sized chunks, a minute to 5 minutes, and then build from there. I think I start off with like going big with the year build series, and I'd have like half-hour, 45-minute long episodes. And I think that was kind of like most people don't want to sit down and watch a 45-minute, 30-minute, whatever video. You have to build up the viewership to where you got to say, okay, I'm going to do these short little snippet videos, and then build from there. Because I think that's where I think I should have started, is a smaller, bite-sized chunks, and to build on my viewership and things like that. Yeah, that's kind of where a lot of social media is going now with TikTok and short little Facebook and Instagram videos and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the advice that I would give is pick at least 2 social media platforms and become a master of those. When it comes not just to your YouTube, but promoting your videos, you can have the best videos in the world, and YouTube does a pretty decent job of organic traffic. But at least for me, the majority of my content comes from me posting it on Reddit, me posting it on Twitter, and some of that. So just being able to navigate, and what you make for TikTok should be different than what you're making for YouTube, just because they are 2 very different platforms. So understanding why and when, and the theory behind each one of those platforms is, I would learn that. That would be my little piece of advice.
Yeah, that's solid advice. Yeah, I would have to agree. I mean, with TikTok, it's like super, super small, bite-sized chunks. And whereas, you can have much longer videos on YouTube, and you expect that out of a YouTube video. It's you know the format. What are you trying to do? Iron out where your vision is and really go for it. yeah, keep it focused on what you want it to be, and like don't be too scatterbrained. Do a handful of things really well, and continue to do that. Yeah, just again, experiment every now and again to see, if you like it, if your viewers like it, that sort of thing. I'm always about experimenting and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. So do you have a video or video series that you've made that is just your favorite? Like if someone's watching this and they haven't seen any of your videos over on the Bearded Axe YouTube channel, and you have to direct them to one particular video, which one are you sending them to?
Yeah. Well, that's a really tough one.
For me, it's your Pell video, because I think that is something that the building the Pell and how to use it, because that's something every player in the foam fighting hobbies can use. Not everyone's going to build a yurt, right? Not everyone is interested in the plasti dip, but building a Pell, and if you enjoy the fighting aspect of our game, knowing how to do that and how to use it, that's for me, that's the one I would be sending them to.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I would say the helmet video, or the I think the I hate lacrosse gloves video, because it's funny, but it also like it hits a nail. It hits some nerves in the community, in the hobby itself, where people bring in these non-decorum items like sneakers and cleats and
mechs,
pads, all the way up to where any kind of sporting equipment is clearly not a part of the game setting, but they do it anyway, and they don't dress it up. And I think that I'd like to improve the game, and I think that's one thing. And it's a very small video. It's anybody can do it. Anybody could actually do this build. So I think it would be that one.
Or the I Hate Magic video.
Yeah, that's another one. But that's that's controversial. And I don't want to be all about controversy, but there's certain things that I'd like to improve upon the hobby, and that's one of the things.
Yeah,
because I think we could do better.
The controversy gets the clicks, man.
It does, but I don't think it's sustainable, right? Because I think there's a handful of videos we can do about it, and then it's just like that's it, and that's really not who I am. I don't like to just piss and moan and expect people to agree with me. I just I like to tell you the problem, and I tell you how I think we should fix it. Those are the two things. If you just complain about something with no solution, you're just complaining, and nobody likes to be around that, and nobody wants to sit down and watch that.
Yep, very, very, very true. So over the last, 6 to 12 months, COVID months, has there been anything in your LARP world that's been exciting or that has piqued your interest? Is there any projects you've been working on? What's the last 6 to 12 months in the LARPscape, the LARP world looked like for you?
I'm still thinking about making a Viking longhouse in the woods behind me.
Cool.
There's plenty of trees that I could cut down and use for timbers for the whole structure of the house. And I was thinking about doing a live build. Like every half hour I do a live broadcast where I'm literally in the middle of building this house. Or maybe just do a time lapse, or just have a 3-hour video or a 4-hour video where I literally just I got a special camera, and it's a 360-degree camera. So I'm thinking about integrating that into it, to where you can pan and tilt wherever you want, and I don't have to edit it. It's just going to be a very large file size to upload. That's basically how it's going to be. But if I can do something like that, where a 4-hour, 5-hour video, or I can give you the click at this time code at the very end to see the aftermath and see where I got with it and my commentary. But yeah, that's a kind of a big thing that I'm kind of thinking about. And I've got a friend in Oregon that's making me an axe to cut down the trees and things like that. So he's going to make a video about how you made the axe. I'm going to do a video about receiving it and testing it out and doing a review on it. But I'm going to have some decorum tools to do this. It's not going to be me and a chainsaw out there,
And hope the axe doesn't break like that knife one in your review that you did where it just snapped on like you had it for 3 minutes or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And I was abusive to it. I was definitely kind of like using it under like rigorous, but very realistic conditions. But they actually got mad at me. It was like, okay, that's a paring knife. You don't take a kitchen knife and use it in the woods. I was like, okay, true. But they actually gave me another knife, and it's so far it's pretty tough. It's done everything. I did a follow up, a redemption video of that company, and it was a much better knife.
That's pretty cool. That's neat that they at least were paying attention enough to be able to interact with you on that.
Right.
That's pretty cool. So you've got the Viking Longhouse. Anything else that? How about this? In the next, are you playing? Are any of your games open and active yet?
Kind of. I'm doing the Viking experience down here in North Carolina, and I'm helping them out a lot with like how a LARP works. How to do combat, how most LARPs do combat, and everything, like how we can run mods or quests and things like that at this particular thing. Because it's like the Viking experience it's a lot like a Ren Fair, but with Vikings. But it's like we're still trying to generate enough like merchants that are like in that kind of mindset to be selling stuff. But yeah, it's I've been helping them out, and that's kind of LARP-esque. Cool. Like they have a storyline that they're doing throughout the day. They're going to have like a raid pass where you can, buy into it, and you can go into the fighting pit and fight all day if you wanted to. But yeah, I was thinking about visiting Dameron and finishing off my character. He's just like an old crotchety, war torn, character that has like a redemptive arc near the end. So that's kind of one thing that I'm looking at. But outside of that, not a whole lot of LARPs are kind of like sticking out there. I'm kind of thinking about this Longhouse thing and how I can maybe have a LARP surrounding that.
Yeah, that'd be cool. That'd be really cool.
It'd be like definitely invite only. And it would be hardcore survival, where you would have to survive an entire weekend out in the woods with whatever you can pack in. That would definitely be a certain mindset of people that might be interested in that.
Yeah, that would be cool. And I know down in your neck of the woods, I think it's a little south of you, is the Weekend Warrior experience. Are you familiar with them at all? I've looked at going there.
Helped them I've been helping them every year.
Cool.
They've had a management switch over, and I've been talking with them and just kind of giving my ideas on from the very beginning of where I think we should go. And, and again, the owners like listened to me and integrated some things and didn't, certain other things. And yeah, so far they're doing pretty well.
Yeah. I love the aesthetic, and I love the lore. I love the games that have that stuff, like Alliance LARP over in the UK. And I think that it looks really, really fun. Again, the hardest part for me is I am not a huge fan of the latex style of combat, because I feel like I'm going to hurt somebody or I'm going to have to pull my shots, and I'm a little concerned about their combat intensity.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I mean, I would say just with Weekend Warrior, I've seen medium and even some hard shots being thrown, and most people are just like, whatever, it's a phone weapon. I'm here to enjoy my time. I'm not going to quibble over a bruise because we're doing combat. We're hitting each other with it. Yeah. It's to be expected. It's like you go to a paintball game. You don't complain about welts. You just accept.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Part of the experience.
But their game looks pretty fun. It looked like the videos and the production that they do, and their YouTube channel and their kind of product reviews. They're doing some, and their game looks very clean and crisp, and it's a game that I think I might try one day.
Yeah, can you repeat that? Because you're kind of going in and out.
Yeah, I was gonna say their game looks very clean and crisp, and it's one of the ones that I want to make it out to one day.
Yeah, hold on a second. All right, there. All right.
Testing. Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one looks pretty fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And again, Zan, the owners, they put a lot of emphasis on how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
And he definitely hit a few nails that I've been thinking about, like a very high entry fee, a gate fee. And what else? A really high standard of like GARP requirement and tenting requirements and things like that. Like it has to be approved before you bring it. And if it's not approved, then you can't bring it. You have to find something else. You're going to buy something else on site for it to work. So there is a certain level of fascism that goes along with that. But I think that you're going to get the gameplay that you want because you have people that are invested, that are there to really enjoy their time and do, and get some really good Instagram shots and all that stuff. But yeah, I think it's slowly coming into its own. I think it's every year that it gets better and better and better. And again, Zan takes in money, manages the money extremely well. He reinvests through the game, and he learns his lessons from the last year and improves upon it the next year. And I think he's definitely growing the game properly.
That's awesome. It is definitely on my short list. That and Beagling are the two, if I travel to and cross game into, that I'm pretty interested in. It looks very, very good. I'm excited about that one. So everybody, I want to appreciate you for tuning in and watching with us. Today we had the Bearded Axe here with Bryan. If you guys haven't, go over and check him out on YouTube. He's got an Etsy store too. The chair that you saw, he makes those too and makes a few other things. And just go and give him a like and subscribe on that stuff if you haven't already. There you go. Product placement right there. He makes some great videos out there, guys. So appreciate you for tuning in. This is The Archive. We'll see you next time.